Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And now, your host, Tim Johnson.
Michael Hecht is the president and CEO of Greater New Orleans, Inc., the economic development organization for Southeast Louisiana. Under Michael's leadership, G&O Inc. was recently named the #2 economic development organization in the United States by Business Facilities magazine. Since Katrina devastated the region in 2005, the Greater New Orleans area and the city specifically have experienced an economic renaissance. We'll discuss that renaissance and the region's booming economy when we return on the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
The Louisiana Business and Industry Show will be back right after this.
Hi, I'm Joe Martin, president of ITI Technical College. Do you want a better life?
Get your associate's degree in occupational studies in information technology from ITI. In 2 years, you'll be on your way to a better life. You will get hands-on specialized training in computers, hardware and software, networking, and more. ITI offers flexible class schedules, and financial aid is available to those who qualify.
So don't wait. Call ITI now or go online. It's that simple.
ITI for a better life.
I'm Leighton Ricks, Livingston Parish, and Livingston Parish is on the move. One of the primary things that we ran on was developing business and jobs in Livingston Parish for our people so that we can bring obviously additional revenue to be able to support our infrastructure needs. We're going to continue to progress here in Livingston Parish. When everybody comes together, these kind of things happen. I mean, what can you say? It's absolutely awesome. It's the perfect place to be. It's where you want to be today, I can guarantee you that.
Hi, I'm Lee Burkeen with Louisiana Football TV Magazine. Be sure to watch our show every week where we have big-time recruits, college coaches, NFL players, current and former players, and call-ins with your questions. Be sure to catch us every Tuesday night at 6:30 live and 10:30 replayed on Cox 4 in Baton Rouge.
Insurance commercials have become unusually funny. We think that's strange because we take auto coverage pretty seriously at Louisiana Farm Bureau Insurance. Of course, when you cover as many vehicles in Louisiana as we do, it doesn't leave a lot of time for silly gimmicks. We're more concerned about what happens to you on the road than any chickens that happen to cross it just to make you chuckle. Louisiana Farm Bureau Insurance. Real service, real people.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show with Tim Johnson.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. We're pleased to be joined by my friend Michael Hecht, president and CEO of G&O Inc. Michael, welcome.
Great to be here, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Great organization, great things going on in the city of New Orleans and the whole region. You guys work with 10 or 11 parishes there. We'll talk about a lot of that as we go along, but start off by telling us about the mission and the structure of Greater New Orleans, Inc.
Sure. Well, the mission is to create jobs and wealth in the southeastern portion of Louisiana, and we do that by pursuing what I call this bifurcated, this dual strategy, which actually we modeled on the Baton Rouge Area Chamber on BRAC. So on one hand, we do business development, which is going and bringing new companies in. A good example of that last year was bringing in GE Capital, their IT Center of Excellence, or yesterday, bringing International Shipholding back to New Orleans from Mobile. They had left after Katrina, now they've come home. That's business development. That's what most people think about when they think about economic development, because that's about ribbon cuttings and headlines. But what we do that's actually even more important is what we call product development. And product development is about developing a better business product through policy initiatives, through branding initiatives, through workforce initiatives, through providing access to capital. And the idea is that you almost want an economy that's like a Honda, the car that sells itself. You want an economy that people think is so good and actually is so good that all the biz dev stuff happens automatically, and that's what we work on with our product development stuff.
It really is a great mix, and you've got a great staff and a great team there. You guys do some governmental relations work, some lobbying to support the businesses in the area, and that region, Greater New Orleans, has become really one of the hot spots in the country in terms of economic growth. We talked about it in the open of the show, but you know, Katrina basically devastated the entire region, and the renaissance that has taken place there since that time from an economic development perspective has been truly amazing. So describe where the economy was, where it is today, and maybe what you believe has driven that renaissance.
Sure. Big questions. Let me try to kind of describe it in a big way. It's almost like a three-act play, right? And you could go back to 1967 when the Saints were founded and when New Orleans was 625,000 people, almost as big as Houston, and arguably a much more important city than a Houston or Atlanta. And then what happened was about 40 years of decadence, of slow decay, of slow decline, because we had the curse of riches. We were so blessed with natural resources and natural culture that we really didn't have to work for it. And so as a result, those places that had to work for it, like Houston, that went out and created a great business environment, that went out and built themselves a great port, they began to pass us by. And so by the time Katrina hit on August 29th, 2005, New Orleans had declined to a city of about 450,000 people and was way diminished in terms of importance. The port was in Houston. Miami had become the center of international trade and commerce. Then New Orleans had almost become this kind of quaint reflection of the past. So then Katrina hits, so that's the second act. And the question is New Orleans ever going to come back? And it was interesting and kind of metaphorical that it really happened in the Superdome, because in the same way, people were saying, well, are the Saints ever going to come back, or will they be gone forever to San Antonio? And so then in that game, I think it was September 2006, when Steve Gleason blocked the kick against the Dirty Birds, and the U2 started playing The Saints Are Coming, and people were crying. They weren't crying just because we beat Atlanta, although that's reason enough to be happy. They cried because they knew at that moment that the Saints were going to come back and that New Orleans is going to come back. And then what happened in this third act is probably unprecedented in our lifetimes. It's what the first economic development, economic recovery czar said is going to be a redemption story, and it has been, because the New Orleans, the greater New Orleans, arguably the Louisiana of today, is much better across any number of measures than the one on August 28th, 2005. And I'll describe it this way. It's like a person with terrible lifestyle habits getting a mild heart attack. It doesn't kill them, but that's the incident, that's the near-death experience that forces them to learn how to live.
To really do things differently and change. And the transformation has been astounding. Now, as someone who's been part of it, who's led a great portion of it, if you had to point to one or two drivers that were really the difference in turning around the economy of the greater New Orleans area, what would you say has been most important, most critical?
Sure. Well, speaking strictly about the economic forces, first and foremost, you got to talk about natural gas and fracking. That's something that has led New Orleans and Baton Rouge to have more large industrial announcements over the past 5 years than anywhere in the South and likely anywhere in the United States. So that's one. The second is international trade. All right, because of the dollar and because of China, we're at a record level of trade exports going out. So that means that the old foundational industries are doing very, very well, right? And oil is up above 90. But then we've also begun to diversify. And so if you look at industries like tech, which didn't exist before, New Orleans is the fastest growing tech market in the entire country. And then we're building a new medical corridor, which is going to add tens of thousands of other jobs. So it's this economic diversification, and that's not only what's bringing us back, that's making us different than in the 70s and 80s when we were just an oil and gas one-trick pony.
It's interesting that we're able to have that diversification because we were so dependent on the industries. Right. And as I spoke to Dan Bornay, president of the Louisiana Chemical Association, on the show just a couple of weeks ago, we were really writing the death certificate for the petrochemical industry in Louisiana until these low natural gas prices have come back. So we've had some factors sort of work in our favor.
That's right.
And it really is a fantastic thing. And one of the things I want to talk about when we come back is what makes New Orleans such a special place, such a culturally diverse place, and such a good place to live and raise a family and run a business. We're visiting with Michael Hecht. He's the president and CEO of the Greater New Orleans, Inc., and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show on Cox 4.
The Louisiana Business and Industry Show will be back right after this.
I go to work every day, and I just
I love doing what I'm doing, and I love being a part of Livingston Parish, and to be elected sheriff, to be able to lead Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office is just such an honor for me. And so I'm very excited about not only where we're at today, but where we're going to be at in the future. The parish is so special to the citizens. They work with the Sheriff's Office, they trust the Sheriff's Office. Our community stands behind us 100%, and they get involved. They don't want crime in Livingston Parish.
At Peak Performance Physical Therapy, we treat the athlete in everyone, from the Grand Slam hitter to grandparents. If your doctor prescribes physical therapy, ask for Peak Performance by name, getting you back in the game of life.
Hello, I'm Eric Edwards with the Livingston Parish Convention and Visitors Bureau. Find out now what's going on in Livingston Parish. We have over 400 nautical miles of waterways. Tee it up at our great world-renowned golf courses. Shop at our antique districts, or come to Bass Pro, our #1 retailer. There's a lot to do in Livingston Parish that you never imagined. It's all happening right here in Livingston Parish. For more information, go online at visitlivingstonparish.com.
At Peak Performance Physical Therapy, we treat the athlete in everyone, from the three-point shooter to the three-piece suit. If your doctor prescribes physical therapy, ask for Peak Performance by name, getting you back in the game of life.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show with Tim Johnson.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. We're visiting with Michael Hecht. He's the president and CEO of G&O Inc. Michael, before the break, we sort of set up this renaissance that's taken place in the greater New Orleans area economically and in a lot of other ways. But you're a guy who's come back to Louisiana and played a critical role in a lot of the economic development that we've seen. From your perspective, what makes New Orleans, Louisiana, such a special place to invest your capital, to create jobs, to run a business, and to live and to work?
I like to think there's three things that we have as advantages in the New Orleans region, and it really extends throughout a lot of Louisiana, that are non-competable. Nobody can ever take them away from us. God's not making any more of them. And the first is the river. We got the river, and we got 6 Class A railroads. Nobody in the country has that. So in terms of logistics, getting to close to 40 states in the union, distribution, we're untouchable. The second is energy. It takes a long time for that oil and gas to be made, and we have to be sitting on top of a lot of it. And the third actually is culture. And what we're finding is that in a world that's becoming increasingly homogenous, and where people are increasingly first picking where they want to live and then picking a job, the fact that New Orleans is unique, has a unique history, has a history that's French, that's Spanish, that's British, that's African, that's Caribbean, that's Indian, all that put together make it a place which is unique in America and probably unique in the world. And now that it's not that we have to accentuate the positive, we had to eliminate the negative. And as we're eliminating the negatives of education, crime, corruption, and flood, those positives, the cultural uniqueness is shining through, and people are choosing to come to New Orleans.
You and I talked about it during the break, but the city overall, really, not just economically, but overall, in terms of its leadership, in terms of its management, in terms of its infrastructure development, a lot of different ways, really maybe in the best shape that it's been in my lifetime, 50 plus years. And so it's really become sort of a center, a place where people want to go to. And I think I read somewhere recently that it's become one of the top 2 or 3 places in the United States for young, bright entrepreneurs to want to move and live. Tell us about that situation.
Well, some of what's most encouraging about what's happening to us is demographics. So we've been named the Brain Gain Champion of America by Forbes, meaning more people under the age of 25 come to the New Orleans region than anywhere else. Tulane, a couple of years ago, had more applications, 44,000, than any private school across the country. That's for only 1,500 slots. And recently, demographer Joel Kotkin said that the New Orleans region is top 10 in the country for in-migration across every age spectrum for workers. So people are coming in, but also we're getting wealthier. We lead the nation in personal GDP growth. So we're becoming more educated, more populated, and also at the same time wealthier. And these are all welcome trends. And I guess the last one, which we should say, is we're becoming more diverse. Because of Katrina, there was this massive influx of Latino population. And that actually is making the New Orleans region look more like other places across the country in terms of racial mixture and balance. And I personally think that's a good thing too.
Well, it truly is one of the great cultural centers in the United States, one of the great cultural cities, character of the city, the music, the just everything about it really is a place that draws people in. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about is the region itself and your organization, GNO Inc., have both been recognized nationally. You mentioned, this place where young entrepreneurs, young smart people want to move and live under 25. But I think recently your organization was named maybe one of the top 2 or 3 economic development organizations in the country. Talk to us about some of the recognition that both GNO Inc. and the region have received over the last year or so.
Sure, and I should say it's also BRAC, it's also Louisiana Economic Development, it's also the state. We're all kind of doing this together. Both us and BRAC and LED have been named one of the top of our type in the country. In terms of the economy, we've been named number 1 in the country for growth in digital media. We're number 1 in the South in terms of large industrial announcements. We're number 6 in the country in terms of middle class job growth. Daily Beast, which is an affiliate of Newsweek, named us the number 2 aspirational city in the country based on a mix of demographics, quality of life, and economy, only behind Austin but in front of Houston. We've been named number 1 for digital media, number 1 for workforce, number 1 for economic opportunity. FDI magazine.
It goes on and on.
And it's embarrassing to say all this, but what I think is so important is that for a place like Louisiana, and particularly New Orleans, that for so many decades didn't believe in itself any longer and was self-deprecating and said, man, at least there's Mississippi.
Right.
All of these third-party validations kind of do matter, because at some point you say, man, there's a preponderance of evidence, maybe we're doing something right. And I think we're beginning to believe that.
As a lifelong Louisianian, that's something that I've always taken great personal interest in, great personal pride, is that for a long time we just beat ourselves up, but I know that there's so many things, as you mentioned before, that occur naturally here, that if we get our politics right, if we get our leadership right, we can really be what we are becoming in one of the great economies. So we got less than a minute left, and I want to ask you this question from your own personal experience. No one does this alone, right? It's been a great team effort, a lot of talent, a lot of levels, but you must be personally satisfied to see the recognition of your city and your organization. How does that feel for you as a leader in the greater New Orleans area?
Well, it's immensely satisfying. I feel incredibly blessed to be able to do this work. I've never had a job in my entire life that has had this much intellectual and emotional feedback constantly. To be fighting the good fight and to be winning is incredibly satisfying. And I think from a creative standpoint, let me put it this way. When I was little, I used to build cities on the floor of my room using Lincoln Logs and Legos. And economic development is really kind of the same thing, except we're not just using bricks and mortar, we're using policy, we're using marketing. To see this place begin to develop and really become what it should be, could be, to self-actualize is what makes getting out of bed every day. It's what makes this more of a lifestyle than a job. And we're going to look back on these days, all of us, and say, it was fun to be doing that.
You mentioned winning, and I want to come back from the break and talk about some of the wins that the region has seen. We're visiting with Michael Hecht. He's the president and CEO of GNO Inc., and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show on Cox 4.
The Louisiana Business and Industry Show will be back right after this.
Hi, I'm Lee Burkeen with Louisiana Football TV Magazine. Be sure to watch our show every week where we have big-time recruits, college coaches, NFL players, current and former players, and call-ins with your questions. Be sure to catch us every Tuesday night at 6:30 live and 10:30 replayed on Cox 4 in Baton Rouge.
Hi, I'm Joe Martin, president of ITI Technical College. Do you want a better life?
Get your associate's degree in occupational studies in information technology from ITI. In 2 years, you'll be on your way to a better life. You will get hands-on specialized training in computers, hardware and software, networking, and more. ITI offers flexible class schedules, and financial aid is available to those who qualify.
So don't wait. Call ITI now or go online. It's that simple.
ITI, for a better life.
At Peak Performance Physical Therapy, we treat the athlete in everyone, from the soccer star to the soccer mom. If your doctor prescribes physical therapy, ask for Peak Performance by name, getting you back in the game of life.
Insurance commercials have become unusually funny. We think that's strange because we take auto coverage pretty seriously at Louisiana Farm Bureau Insurance. Of course, when you cover as many vehicles in Louisiana as we do, it doesn't leave a lot of time for silly gimmicks. We're more concerned about what happens to you on the road than any chickens that happen to cross it just to make you chuckle. Louisiana Farm Bureau Insurance. Real service, real people.
At Peak Performance Physical Therapy, we treat the athlete in everyone, from long drivers to unlucky drivers. If your doctor prescribes physical therapy, ask for Peak Performance by name, getting you back in the game of life.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show with Tim Johnson.
Well, welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. We're visiting with Michael Hecht, the President and CEO of G&O Inc. And Michael, one of the things as a lifelong Louisianian that I am so proud of, and I had this conversation with Adam Knapp, who leads BRAC as well, is that we are working together in ways that we never have before. For so many years, it was North Louisiana against South. It was the city of New Orleans against the city of Baton Rouge. But you guys have changed that culture. You've created what's called the Southeast Super Region Committee, specifically to work together on some of these larger economic development projects, because that old adage of a rising tide lifting all boats really does ring true. So tell us briefly what the Southeast Super Region Committee is and maybe some of the things you guys are working on.
Sure. Well, the Southeast Super Region is a group of 20 of our board members and 20 of the Baton Rouge area board members, and now we're including people from Lafourche and Terrebonne as well, and Lafayette will probably come in soon. And it's based on the realization that when we're competing against a place like Houston that's got 5 million people, more than the entire state of Louisiana, if we don't hang together, then we're just simply not large enough in terms of labor shed, in terms of assets. But if we stick together, then we can actually be world beaters. And I'll give you the very specific evidence of that. Over the past decade, the New Orleans region has had more large announcements than anywhere in the South, 55. Baton Rouge is right behind with 54. Houston's way in third with 36. So New Orleans and Baton Rouge together, we've had 99 wins over the decade, triple that of Houston. That demonstrates our power. So together now we're working on policy, we work on higher ed, we're working on transportation. Workforce is going to be one of our big issues this year, but we also market together. Sometimes we'll meet with companies together. We went on a trip to Brazil together, and most recently 175 of us, including Lafayette and Homa Thibodeau, went to Florida to see how Orlando and Tampa work together. And so the more that we begin to have the business community think of ourselves as one economic unit, the more politically powerful we're going to be and the more effective we're going to be in terms of economic development. And I think we've made some fairly historic progress in that regard. Now instead of the channel connecting, Paris to London, we got I-10 connecting New Orleans to Baton Rouge, and hopefully very soon there'll be a commuter train doing the same thing.
No question but that when we work together, we can be more successful. Now, you mentioned 55 major announcements. You guys have had some great success. Tell us about some of the projects that we maybe are underway now in the greater New Orleans area, some of the things that might be on their way in terms of investment and job creation.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I like most about our pipeline right now is not just that it's big, it's diverse. You've got oil and gas fired projects, you've got technology projects, you've got advanced manufacturing projects. And again, that's the diversity coming down that's going to make us stronger in the future. If I were to look back on the last year or so and think about those projects that I think were most significant, I would point to yesterday, international shipholding coming back. It means that our best and brightest companies and people who left after Katrina are now coming back to Louisiana. That's great news. I think about Smoothie King, a company that was founded in 1967 in Jefferson, was bought by a foreign national, was going to go to Dallas. We sat down. Now, not only is Juan Kim on our board at G&O Inc., but this morning it was announced that the New Orleans Arena is going to be renamed the Smoothie King Arena, or as I'm calling it, the Blender.
How about that?
All right?
The Big Blender.
The Big Blender.
What a great thing.
And that's a great one. And then you go back to the real kind of significant announcements like GE Capital in New Orleans or the IBM project in Baton Rouge. these announcements transcend themselves. It's not just about the jobs, it's about the validation that they give to the entire community when the world says, man, the fourth biggest company in the world could go anywhere, is choosing New Orleans for its first IT center of excellence. And the same for IBM over here on the river. So yeah, we continue to do well. Some of it is luck because of what's happened with natural gas, that's serendipity. But I promise you, what it really comes down to is we've gotten our act together. We have better business conditions, better incentives, but most importantly, it's the teamwork. Starting at the governor, Secretary Morey, down to parish presidents and mayors, people like Adam and myself, all of us are working together. We're all energized. We get up in the morning and we execute. And I had a consultant say to me a few weeks ago at a dinner, he said, your team from top to bottom is the best there is in the country right now. And I think as long as we keep that team together, along with this blessing of natural resources, we can only do okay or better, over time.
And it's going to keep going. Now, one of the things, we got about 2 minutes left in the show, so I want to make sure that we hit on something. G&O Inc. has weighed in on a critical issue in South Louisiana, and this is this flood insurance premium issue. We're about to see some astronomical increases if some things don't change relative to flood insurance, and that's going to have a huge impact on the business community in Louisiana as well. Give us a 30-second primer on what's going on there and what you guys are doing to help avoid that.
Mostly good news. We had a historic victory in the Senate last week, 67 to 32, supermajority, bipartisan. Now we're turning to the House. The House has indicated they want to act on this quickly. And at the end of the day, it's not an ideological issue, it's hip pocket. When your constituents are being hit with premiums going to $15,000 a year, they're calling their congressman, and the congressmen are going to act. We're going to solve this for Louisiana, and we're going to solve it for the nation.
About a minute left then now. What's on the horizon for G&O Inc.?
Well, we're now looking really to the gubernatorial election in 2 years. We're working with partners like BRAC and Lafayette, but also statewide partners like LaBie, Cable, Blueprint, PAR, because we realize that when the next governor comes in, it's going to be his or her job to consolidate these gains and make sure they continue into the future.
Keep the momentum going.
Absolutely. And if you look back, or in my opinion, biased, one of the main drivers of the momentum of the past 5 years has been the active business community. So it's critical that the business community continues to engage in economic and political issues. And we're going to try over the next 5 years, leading up to the tricentennial of New Orleans in 2018, to make sure that what you've seen over the past 5 years is not a blip, but is an increase to a sustained plateau that takes us to a better place as a state, kind of like what New York did coming out of the 90s or Miami coming out of the 70s. We think this can actually be a real inflection point for us as a community.
Great work in the city of New Orleans. Thanks for your time today. We want to have you back on the show sometime soon. We appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Keep it going.
Thank you.
Guys, you've been watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show on Cox 4.